Shough has a great arm capable of throwing it downfield and at diverse arm angles, has good size, and has a little bit of scrambling ability. On top of that, he also does a really good job protecting the ball. So he should score high in this area, right? Well, that's where it may differ from other analysts. Hey y'all! For this week's video, we'll be doing an in-depth analysis of Louisville quarterback Shough. For my evals, I use a lot of different grading methods, which if you want more details on these, you can check out my eval on Cam Ward, which should be accessible with the link that should be on the screen now, as I have more details in that. Also, if you want to check out my grades and evals of quarterbacks from last year for reference, you can check that out with the link that should be in the description. For any new viewers, I'll be trying to cover a quarterback nearly every week leading up to 2025 NFL Draft, and I've already covered Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, Jalen Milroe, Will Howard, and Kyle McCord. If you want to check out those evals, there should be a link on the screen now that should take you to a playlist of all those evals. Also, you want to make sure you don't miss any other quarterback evals or any other future position evals, be sure to subscribe. Now let's take a look at Shough. Also, before we get started, as I mentioned in my previous videos, I'm a contributor for DLF or DynastyLeagueFootball.com, and while this of course won't affect my channel or content here, if you haven't used DLF or want to try to use their premium service, new users can use my discount code BACKSEAT99 in all caps to sign up for DLF Premium for just 99 cents for the first month. That will give you access to all the articles, rankings, tools, and more. Now, I've also mentioned this before, but I always want to make sure I do repeat this just to make it clear. That makes DLF Premium 99 cents for the first month. If you don't like it, you can cancel it within that first month and not be charged more than 99 cents. But if you do forget to cancel it after the first month, or you just want to continue having it and using it, it'll be $12.99 every month after the first month. Starting with a basic look at Shough's stats, he had a modest year, completing 62.7% of his passes for 3,195 yards, 23 touchdowns, and only threw 6 interceptions. He wasn't that productive on the ground with just 19 yards and a touchdown on 42 carries, but he does have some scramble ability, which you can see on display in his game against Notre Dame when he ran for a 46-yard rush and was outrunning defenders. Speaking of Notre Dame, I included his Notre Dame, SMU, Miami, and Clemson games in his samples for his charted games. Similar to his overall season stats, most are relatively unimpressive, with most of the completion percentages being around 60% and multiple being under 60 in the Clemson and Notre Dame games. His passing production was also all over the place, with really poor production against Clemson with just 156 yards and no touchdowns, which funnily enough was the only game in this set that Louisville actually won, and then really good production against Miami and SMU, throwing for over 300 yards and multiple touchdowns. But this slate of games gave Shough a lot of looks of how he handles difficult opponents. Despite needing to keep up with a lot of those games, he did a good job protecting the ball with just 2 interceptions and 1 fumble in all the 4 games combined. So at the very least, we can see that his low season total for turnovers translated to his tough matchups as well. Finally, you did read their age right, that he will be 25 years and 7 months old on draft day. So that will be a big question mark for NFL teams if they do want to have a rookie turn 26 in the first month of their rookie season. But to make sense of his fluctuating production, let's start to take a look at some of his grades. Starting with Shough's footwork, there are improvements he can make, but he does a good job keeping his feet flat and quickly getting his feet aligned with his target in the pocket. He was good at throwing with anticipation despite being new to the team and being able to quickly get his feet set were a big part of that success. My big gripe with Shough's footwork though is that he has a tendency to trail back against pressure, which leads to a lot of back foot throws rather than stepping up into the pocket. That tendency to throw off his back foot goes way too often, especially against pressure, and ruins a lot of his attempts in pressure situations as he just completely loses his base. His base in general is inconsistent and not always sturdy, and is made worse with his upper and lower body not always being in sync due to being delayed with his hip drive. He can also sometimes make his base shaky by bouncing in the pocket when he's getting impatient or starts to feel the pressure. Those lacking lower body mechanics were part of the reason why he had some struggles consistently getting the ball to his pass catchers in a way to maximize their yards after the catch. His dropback also shows some signs of inexperience, with it being very heel clicky and with a lot of leg crossing. He also just seems to be fighting with it to find the right pacing for his steps at times. Also, though he can get his chest square with his target on the move, he can sometimes struggle to get his feet aligned, which also causes some lapses in accuracy on the move. So with a lot of work still needing to be done to break his bad habits in his footwork, Shough ended up earning a C- for his footwork. For his pocket presence, he has active feet in the pocket that help him maneuver in the pocket to extend his time. He also has a good sense of when pressure is breaking and knows when to break out of the pocket. As I mentioned before, though he didn't do it too often, he also has some scramble ability to help him escape the pressure. When he isn't able to escape the pressure, he is comfortable making throwaways to try again the next play. Also, he does a really good job finding passing windows despite his limited starting experience, with few passes deflected at the line of scrimmage. However, his lack of starting experience does show with his difficulties against pressuring blitzes. He can be a bit delayed in recognizing pressure and can be a bit slow resetting and finding his check down when he's pressured. While he is a pretty clean decision maker when kept clean, he can make some really poor and overly aggressive decisions when under duress. So the mixed bag of some veteran savviness but some signs of inexperience from lack of reps, Shough earned a B- for his pocket presence. For his arm strength and release, Shough was known for his arm talent as a recruit, but hasn't got a chance to show it off due to all his injuries. Well, now that he finally was able to put in a healthy season, he didn't disappoint. He can effortlessly drive the ball downfield and throw to the opposite side of the field with good velocity. He also has enough arm strength to be able to put great arc on throws to be able to drop it into buckets down the field. When he's targeting downfield, he does a good job putting the ball in a place where only his pass catcher can make a play on it. His feel for release angle also helps him in this, being able to put some great touch on throws. Also, his release in general is really good with a quick motion with minimal dip and overextension. He's also comfortable throwing at different arm angles and loves to go to his sidearm throw to try to fit the ball between defenders. That quick release helps him get the ball out quickly before the pass rush gets a chance to make a sack. Now that being said, I would like to see him use that release and arm angles a little bit more when he's facing pressure, as it could be a big weapon to him to try to improve in that area. So, now with more positive, Shough ended up earning a B+ for both his arm strength and release. Moving to his playmaking, ball security, and top start potential, as I mentioned, Shough has a great arm capable of throwing it downfield and at diverse arm angles, has good size, and has a little bit of scrambling ability. On top of that, he also does a really good job protecting the ball. So he should score high in this area, right? Well, that's where he may differ from other analysts. While he does have physical traits to be able to create plays, he's often not manufacturing plays due to his struggles against pressure and blitzes. As we'll see in his charting, he has really poor numbers against both, and that is such a rate-limiting step for quarterbacks. What contributes to that issue is also slow processing. He does a lot of staring and focusing on his first read, which leads him to catching the pressure too late and being stuck needing to resort to a throwaway. That staring also made it easier for defenses to stop him and made him easier to beat on blitz plays, as he would key in the defense where he was planning to go. I think the other thing that makes me worried about him as a playmaker is the number of times when he would come out of the gate swinging, but then would fizzle out as the game went on. It felt like a lot of times he would start to struggle once the team was in a hole, and then he'd try to force things too much. I think a lot of the issues I just mentioned could be chalked up due to inexperience, but it's also fair to put some blame on play calling, which also has me worried about Shough at the next level. This season at Louisville, he had a play action rate on 44% of his pass attempts. Similar to Jackson Dart, that is a really high mark and makes me really nervous, since that makes things so much easier in college against less polished players, but typically doesn't work as well in the NFL and is a big reason why most teams use play action on only about 20-25% of pass attempts. So reading defenses without the continual aid of play action may require an adjustment for him. So we're talking about an inexperienced, soon-to-be 26-year-old quarterback with some pretty big glaring flaws that may not be fixed before he's 30, and he also has a pretty significant injury history to top it all off. That might be a really hard sell to a team and could take him off of some teams' boards altogether. So my concerns of how much he can create out of structure and when under pressure, Shough earned just a C- for his playmaking. With an interception and fumble on 7 of his combined 431 pass and rush attempts, Shough had an interception or fumble on every 61.57 pass or rush attempt, which translates to a B per my scale. For his top start potential, he ended up earning a C, since while he does have limitations, he has good upside and veteran pocket management skills that give him a fighting chance in the NFL. So to know how much of a fighting chance he has, let's start to take a look at his charting results. If you're a visual follower, you're likely seeing a pretty fun pattern that could actually work as a painting. Starting from the bottom, he was great in the short area of the field with scores of 88.24% in the short left, 83.33% in the middle, and 76.92% in the right. For the medium era, it was less impressive with a really good 80% score in the medium right, but then a poor 75% score in the middle and a really bad 50% score in the left. Those struggles in the medium area also show a lot of the struggles that he had leading his pass catchers after the catch, like I mentioned before. So it was really disappointing to see this be an issue as frequently as it was based off his charting, but hopefully this is just a bit of an inexperienced issue for him and improves in more reps. For the intermediate area, things were a bit of a mixed bag with 50% scores in the intermediate left and middle, and then a good 75% score on the right. His deep area is solid but not great, with a solid 50% score on the left and a decent 44.44% score on the right. The deep area is a bit difficult to evaluate because, as I mentioned, he has the arm to get the ball downfield, but his accuracy would fluctuate between throwing nice bucket throws and then throws just being pretty well off. Again, I think we could use inexperience as an excuse here, but I don't think we should get carried away with using that for every little issue that happens for him. But overall, I think it's kind of a mixed bag for Shough's accuracy. He's good in the short area, which does show that he's good at aligning his feet quickly, but needs to work on throwing pass catcher friendly balls in the medium and deep areas of the field to be able to make more of a regular impact in games. Moving to his off-platform charting, this is where things are a bit all over the place. His short and medium areas are basically flipped from his on-platform results with a poor 0% score on the short left, albeit on just one throw, 62.5% in the short middle, 55.56% in the short right, and 60% in the medium right. His medium left and middle were both good this time though, at 80% in the left and 100% in the medium middle. Also, he had one attempt where he was able to show that arm talent, flinging it downfield on a move to the right and scored a 50% on that throw. I think that deep throw to the right kind of shows the potential Shough has if he is able to find that balance of converting some of his throwaways to passes downfield without converting them to turnovers. He clearly has the arm to drive it on the move, but mostly is keeping things close to the line of scrimmage. The problem is that he lacks great accuracy on the move in the short area, but if he can convert a few of those plays downfield on the move, that can really start to open up a new way for the offense to stay on the field and get some momentum. So with doing a closer look at one of his specific games, I decided to take a look at his last game played in the sample and his worst game statistically, which was against Clemson. From what you can see from the charting, it was as rough as the stat line suggests. He did start out good with a score of 100% on 12 throws in the short left and 83.33 scores in the medium middle and right. But he did have poor scores of no more than 50% in all other areas targeted, with 50% in the short right and intermediate left, 0% in the short left, and 25% in the deep right. It shows in the charting numbers, but Shough really just struggled with his ball placement all game. His footwork was the worst it was in all the sampled games I did, and it just caused so many throws to be way off and forced his pass catchers to work much harder than they had to. Those issues also led to Louisville starting to lean on the run game more, which thankfully the run game stepped up because otherwise the results would have likely been different had needed to count on Shough. So just a pretty rough game from the pocket for Shough, and really shows what can happen if his footwork doesn't progress or even worsens. Now his off-platform accuracy against Clemson was at least better. Not a lot of volume in most areas, with each only having the equivalent of one throw in each area other than the short right, which had a whopping 2 throws. But he did have 100% scores in the short and medium middle, 75% in the short right, and a good 50% in the deep right. His medium right was the only one with a lower end of the score, with a 50% score based on a single throw. So it was good to see him be more successful and consistent on the move here. This unfortunately wasn't a big turnaround game against pressure for Shough though, as he still only had a 42.11% success rate against pressure and a measly 30% success rate against blitz against Clemson, which are both very, very bad marks. So a step in the right direction for sure, but still a boat with holes in it. As for his supplemental data, his accuracy was a bit all over the place, with his left and right side of the field accuracy being less than 50 percentile, with scores of 65% in the left and 66.04% in the right. His middle field accuracy was a bit better and slightly above average at 72.58%. However, due to his struggles on the left and right side of the field, his total accuracy score ended up only being 67.16%, which has him just a little bit below the 50th percentile for total accuracy. As I mentioned, he can have a fair number of way off throws with a total score of 12 on platform and 1 off platform. He did take a fair number of sacks in the sample with 9 total, but that made up nearly all of his sacks in his total season, as he took 14 throughout the whole year, so I wouldn't look into that as someone that takes a lot of sacks, as it was just something where it was more in these specific games. Also, as I mentioned before, he only had 1 fumble in the sample. Also, as mentioned, he only had the 1 fumble in this sample. We can also see how often he does go to throwaways, with easily the most of the quarterbacks in this class at 16 total throws or 4 per game. Now that at least did keep his interceptions and would-be interceptions down with just 1 interception and 1 dropped interception. So it was at least reassuring that we aren't seeing a whole lot of drop interceptions that are maybe hiding some possible ball security issues. Also for reference, he had 6 drops in his sample and didn't have many rushes, with 4 total design runs and 6 scrambles. So again, just a part of his game that he could maybe implement a bit more to make him a bit more versatile if he's able to go out and go for runs more. Finally, the roughest area, his success against blitz and pressure. Shough ended up with just a 42.11% success rate against blitz and 46.9% success rate against pressure. Those are both easily in the bottom percentile, and his blitz success would have been second worst compared to the quarterbacks drafted last year, ahead of just Devin Leary, who was awful against pressure and blitzes, so that's not really saying much. Also, his pressure rate would have been third worst, just barely edging out Spencer Rattler by less than 0.3%. So that's really, really bad, and a massive red flag, as we've seen Rattler have so many issues against pressure in the NFL, despite having the arm strength to drive it downfield. If Shough does want a chance to deliver on his arm talent, he will absolutely need to find a way to at least get these scores to mediocre levels. So with all that data, Shough earned an A- for his short throw accuracy, a B for his medium-intermediate throw accuracy, C+ for his deep throw accuracy, and B+ for his throw on the run ability. For his success against pressure and blitz, with the struggles he regularly showed, he earned just a C+ in this category. For a summary of Shough's strengths, he has really good arm strength that he's always willing to show off. He also isn't afraid to show off the diverse arm angles he can make throws at. Something that may go unnoticed and underappreciated is his ability to throw with anticipation, which, again, is extremely impressive for a quarterback with as little experience that he has, and in his first year with the team. His pocket management skills are also really impressive with his lack of playing time, as he does a really good job making movements in the pocket that some veterans still struggle with. Finally, while he has an arm to fling it, he isn't a reckless gunslinger and is typically smart with the ball when he's kept clean. As for area improvements, though it's technically not something he can improve in, I do have to bring up his age and injury history. It's hard to expect a team to trust a quarterback with as little experience as Shough, and especially one who will be 26 the first month of the regular season and has extensive injury history as he has. As for things he can improve though, he does need to work on improving his footwork and his tendency to throw off his back foot. There are too many times where he botched good opportunities and led to inaccurate throws. Also, he needs to work to get more consistent with his deep ball. He has the arm to fling it, but he needs more reps in practice to get it there consistently and routinely. Finally, he absolutely needs to find a way to improve it against pressure and blitzes. It's such a liability right now and such an easy way to beat him. Having such a glaring hole like that can often lead to losing a roster spot. He has to do everything he can to make it harder for a team to convince themselves that it's worth moving on from him, with the other things I already mentioned they can't control. So by taking the average all his grades and scores, Shough ended up earning a final score of 2.72 out of 4, which equals out to being near the top of my may have a future role tier. I think it's a very fitting spot for Shough to finish at, as he has starting traits like his arm strength, size, and some good pocket discipline to pair with a bit of scrambling ability. However, his age, injury history, and deficits in his games due to missing so much time will make it harder for him to earn a roster spot and having staying power in the NFL. Maybe he does make it eventually, but there's just a lot of obstacles both in and out of his control that I'll have to get past. As for a comp, if you do want to be an optimist, there are a lot of similarities to Jared Goff if Shough does go to the right team. However, I think that's a pretty lofty projection, and that needs a lot to go his way to be able to reach it. So I instead have what I think is a much more realistic comp of Mason Rudolph. Rudolph and Shough both have good size and quality arms. Both also have good pocket management skills and have a good eye to find passing windows. They also did a solid job reducing sacks thanks to their release and their willingness to take throwaways. While neither are rushers, they both can pick up yards on the ground from time to time. Also, both are good at attacking the intermediate areas of the field and can do a good job throwing with anticipation. Unfortunately, both can do a lot of staring and can struggle with decision making when pressured or blitzed. Also, both come from a play-action heavy scheme and will need to be able to prove they can win in a more standard NFL offense. Both also have issues with their footwork which compromises their accuracy and affects how often they can give their pass catcher a good runway to pick up yards after the catch. Similar to Rudolph, I think teams could find Shough's traits appealing and target him earlier than expected. However, I do hope they have a developmental plan in place and have a good offensive line to put him in a position to succeed. And that's all for Tyler Shough. Let me know what your thoughts are on the eval on Shough, since I do think he has some sleeper upside with his arm talent. Also, if you don't want to miss any future quarterback evals or any other future position evals, be sure to subscribe. While you're at it, like the videos, it would help the channel grow thanks to you. If you want just a written form in my eval, you can subscribe to my Substack as I'll have full written evals for each player out at the same time as the video. But thank you all and see you all next time.